Hello everybody, and this is now a follow-up video to my first one about my Inari build. And if you've read the comments on the first part, you know something that's already happened, which is that I've decided to return the MSI Godlike Gaming. Excuse the shakier camera this time around, I didn't feel like dragging my tripod out, and I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible. So let's get right into it. So I did have the system, which, as you can see right now, in a preview here is, sitting here currently a little on the disassembled side. But I'll give you a view inside of it. Just a preview of things to come. I will actually do something with the thing actually running and operating and that. I just wanted to wait until the system was actually, working before I did that. Maybe I'll video it running Cinebench. I decided to return the Godlike because I ran into a lot of problems with it. And I was going to run through the problems right now for anybody who's maybe thinking of buying the X570 Godlike just so that they're appraised of it, or we can compare experiences. Now, there's a very real possibility that I just simply got a broken Godlike. And I'm not going to discount that. That's totally a reasonable assumption that I just got a defective one. I didn't win the lottery on it. But to be blunt, I just had a lot of issues. The first issue I had, now granted, Steve at Gamers Nexus just did a video last night after I'd already shipped the thing back, where he explored some of the behavior. So some of the behavior appears to just be a precision boost problem. Obviously, I'm a sample size of one. I have one CPU, I have one motherboard. So it's sometimes a little difficult to determine if something is normal behavior when I'm operating in this semi-vacuum. Something differentiating between, say, normal operating behavior and what is actually broken can be relatively difficult. And I'm just going to pan around to some other stuff just to make it interesting. Ignore the mess. But regardless, so first thing I did is after I got the thing set up, installed Windows and everything, is I went and loaded up Cinebench R15. I fired up Cinebench R15 and ran it to see where my scores were. Now, if you've been following the 3900X, an average, like, out-of-the-box stock settings 3900X and Cinebench R15 is around 3100 multi-core. I was scoring between 2000 and 2400. It didn't seem to matter what I did. If I set it to, like, real-time or high priority or anything in scheduler, didn't matter. Disabling everything, obviously, on a brand new clean install of Windows 10 Pro. Nothing running in the background, everything just as clean as I can get it, and still, yeah, something very, very wrong. Now, I did get a couple runs that did hit the 3000 mark, but they were very few. Most of the runs I had were down around 25 to 2600 at best. I think the average, I'd say, would be about 2500. I stopped counting after I was just trying to get it working correctly. When I enabled PBO to see if that would help or get me any closer, I got like 27 to 2800. That's way below where it should be with PBO enabled, and that's when it was stable. Overall, I would say it was massively unstable, to be honest. Half the time it was black screening for any reason. If I ran Cinebench a couple times in a row, it would just black screen crash, boot me back to, like, the BIOS, etc., and then it would just cease running right. So if I was, like, dialing the thing in, trying to get the settings better, and the thing just decided to black screen and crash, it would then, after that point, refuse to actually run correctly at all after that point, which is not good, for obvious reasons. So I played around the BIOS. I didn't like the BIOS too much. I could have dealt with it, but I didn't like the BIOS very much either. MSI kind of has some settings in there that are not, like, labeled, described, or anything else. So, like, for example, under Precision Boost Overdrive, there's 4, quote, extreme performance presets, but there's no, like, telling me what exactly they are doing. Are they meant for liquid cooling? Are they meant for air cooling? Are they meant for a closed loop? Are they meant for liquid nitrogen or something? Doesn't say any of that. And if it applies, like, say, for example, a huge voltage offset or something to the CPU in order to try to boost it, that could be very bad if I don't have the proper cooling set up for that. And there's no real way of knowing that without them either telling me or me throwing the thing on and finding out, oh shit, it's boosting 1.7 volts or something into the CPU, and it's dead. So MSI should really work on that and give documentation for those settings, because I know like a quick Google search didn't return anything at the time, and I know that, for example, my manual had nothing about those, which is not very good documentation. Beyond that, as I said, there's more than one problem. Now, I will concede that Steve at Gamers Nexus did do a nice thing. He, describing the differences between Precision Boost 2 and Precision Boost Overdrive, because a lot of people are unfortunately confused on that due to the poor naming choices. But the other thing is he also did describe that Cinebench, or just about half the benchmarks, getting repeatable results for benchmarking purposes is extremely difficult because of the behavior of Precision Boost. That's kind of crappy, but it also is understandable. The reason is it's extremely sensitive and touchy, which means that in like a game or something with like rapid changing stuff, it probably works very well. But when you feed it a consistent load, like for example a Cinebench run, it's not going to be fantastic, to be honest. And you're probably gonna be better off. That's probably one reason you're better off, and you're going to get more consistent results with like an all-core overclock, which for the record I did actually, but I wanted to use PBO. But in addition to those issues, I did also have like big issue with, for example, the software for the motherboard not wanting to install, the software for the motherboard constantly crashing, the software for the motherboard not detecting the motherboard, the software for the motherboard giving me no control over the dynamic dashboard, which was one of the things I really liked on the Godlike, and giving me no control over the RGB LEDs. I think I got control over both things like once or twice, and it didn't last long. It black screened after a couple minutes, and then I lost all control whatsoever. I also know that after I installed the motherboard software, it was throwing up little BIOS errors on the LED screen, even though it was working technically. And the LED errors were related to onboard peripherals and stuff, so I suspect there was something wrong, obviously, between the communication of the software and the board. Whether it was a software bug or a actual defective issue with my motherboard, I can't be certain because I only have one Godlike. And personally, if I have problems with something, I'm not exactly going to go through buying the same thing all over again. I just generally avoid it. The third issue I had was about a half dozen times it just kept losing my graphics card for one reason or another, putting up VGA error on the dynamic dashboard, which was working. I just couldn't assign it to do anything. It worked from the standpoint of like telling me errors and stuff, but that's about it. And displaying the stock little animation of Lucky the Dragon, which was nice, but I kind of wanted to see temps and stuff on it. Don't know why that was. The video card's fine, or at least as far as I know, it's fine. Given that I used it in my old system, and it's fine. I wasn't even loading the graphics card or anything. I was starting off with just pure CPU testing. So, what I get to replace it? Now, the obvious choice should have been like the Aorus Extreme. I decided against the Aorus Extreme because it's got a 7 to 10 day lead time, and I kind of want to get this thing back up and running soon. I kind of had a bunch of stuff planned to get done, and unfortunately, it's either put my old system back together and stuff, which is not going to be that easy, or get this up and running, and I chose the latter. So if I had been able to get the Aorus Extreme in the same time period, I would have bought the Aorus Extreme. However, the Aorus Master is a very good board, so don't get me wrong. A lot of the reviewers have been using the Aorus Master and having very, very good luck with it, it seems. It seems to maybe be a little bit more stable. I like the look of the BIOS a little bit more than the MSI, although I have to say it looks like Gigabyte kind of ripped off Asus on that front. Overall, though, it's got a lot of the things I wanted on a motherboard. For example, it's got the triple... I can't exactly unwrap it with one hand. It's got the triple M.2 slots on it. It has faster than gigabit Ethernet, albeit not 10 gig. I figured I'll just deal with that later if I choose to do the file server. This thing has almost twice the number of USB ports compared to the Godlike, which is actually kind of useful. why MSI made the Godlike with like 5 USBs, I don't know, plus a Type-C. Beyond that, it's got some neat things, like, for example, it's got a little microphone that supposedly will adjust your fan speed and everything based upon the noise level, which is nice. Which actually brings me to the other thing I'm changing, which is I'm probably somewhat eliminating the Corsair commander that I have in the 680X right now for fan control, because I don't know, I don't trust the idea of it. I prefer my fans on the motherboard. I kind of did it out of a desire to make my life easy and have all the fan connections sort of centralized, which is actually one thing the Aorus Extreme has, is a very similar little breakout box that you can plug all your fans into. But I kind of came around to the idea of, you know what, I think I would much rather my motherboard handle the fans, which is why I've always done. I actually just realized there's supposed to be a Y-splitter cable with all this, and I think it's still in the box, which I'll have to go fish around and find. Beyond that, I mean, there's not much else to say. I'm not going to say, like, I wouldn't recommend the Godlike. Other users have had fine time with it. Maybe I just had some piece of hardware it doesn't like. I've had that happen before. I had a motherboard at one point. It completely refused to boot with any AMD Radeon card in it. It only accepted NVIDIA, which made 0 sense. I had nothing but issues with ATI cards in that thing back in the day. I've seen some weird stuff like that before, with motherboards just pitching fits and refusing to work with stuff for no logical reason. And so, or some crackpot logic thing that I didn't see at the time. So, and maybe I should have tried another version of the Godlike. I should have tried a replacement Godlike and seen if it did any better. But I just tend to be the kind of person where if I get a bad taste in my mouth with something, unless there's a very strong reason to stick with it, it's going back. And I'm getting something else. So anyways, happy building to everyone out there. I know this was me rambling on for like 12 and a half minutes, but yeah, and I know it's like not exactly the most interesting thing, but without a computer I can't cut anything together or do anything interesting. Hopefully I'll be able to do some videos like that for people later. But yeah, everyone, just happy building, good luck, and leave comments if you have any questions or anything.